He was sent to save Middle-earth, but in the end, he almost destroyed it. Long before the Fellowship, before even the Shire existed, a white-cloaked figure stepped off a ship from the west, the first of 5 messengers sent by the gods. His name was Curanir, though in the tongues of men, he would be called Saruman the White. He was not born of flesh. He was a Maya, a lesser spirit of the same order as Sauron himself, wise beyond measure, shaped by Aule the smith, master of craft and creation. In him burned a mind made for order, for logic, for control. And that was both his gift and his curse. When whispers of a returning shadow reached the Valor, they sent the Istari, the wizards, to guide the free peoples, not as rulers, but as counselors. They were forbidden to dominate, forbidden to match Sauron's power with power. Instead, they were to inspire resistance, to awaken courage rather than command it. Saruman was chosen to lead them. He was the eldest, the most learned, the one who spoke with authority. Even the elves bowed to his knowledge of the rings of power and of the dark arts that forged them. When the White Council was formed, it was Saruman who sat at its head, the voice of reason in an age of fear. For a time, he was everything he was meant to be. He studied deeply, traveled far, gathered the hidden wisdom of men and elves. He walked the ruins of Dol Guldur itself, tracing the enemy's footprints in shadow. None in Middle-earth knew more about Sauron, or believed more firmly that they could understand him. And yet, that was the first crack. For among the Istari was another Maya, Gandalf, quiet where Saruman was proud, patient where Saruman was precise. And though Saruman wore white, the hearts of the wise often turned toward the Grey Wanderer instead. Saruman noticed. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps it was fear, but somewhere along the line, curiosity became hunger. He began to look into the Palantír, the ancient seeing stones of Númenor, once tools of kings, now silent relics that whispered only to those who dared. And through one of them, a shadow answered. It wasn't sudden corruption. It was fascination. The belief that he could outthink the darkness, that he could use it. And that was how the White Wizard began to fall. Not by hate, not by greed, but by the most dangerous illusion of all, the illusion of control. They say evil always begins with a whisper. But for Saruman, it began with a question. How could Sauron forge such power? And how could he be defeated without using the same tools? That question became his obsession. At first, his studies were harmless, the deep pursuit of knowledge that had once made him great. In the vaults of Minas Tirith, he pored over ancient scrolls of Númenor, learning every secret of the rings of power. He became Middle-earth's greatest authority on their making, their purpose, and their corruption. But knowledge without humility is like fire without a hearth. It spreads, it consumes. When Galadriel proposed Gandalf to lead the White Council instead of him, the spark of pride caught flame. Saruman smiled and bowed, but inside he burned. The council was meant to be his domain, his stage. And when Gandalf refused that honor, Saruman's humiliation only deepened. He he began to walk paths the others would not tread. He built his tower at Orthanc, a marvel of black stone that predated even Gondor, a fortress that could not be broken by force. There, he gathered relics and instruments of study, machines and furnaces, the hum of industry echoing through the once green valley of Isengard. But in the depths of that tower lay a relic older than all of them. A Palantír, one of the 7 seeing stones of Númenor. At first it seemed harmless. The stones were built for communication, not domination. But through it, Saruman reached farther and farther into the east, until one day something looked back. It was Sauron. Not a shadow of rumor, not a name in an old book, but the Dark Lord himself, awake once more in Mordor. And Saruman, proud and curious, believed he could master the conversation. He told himself he was spying on Sauron, learning his secrets to defeat him. He never saw the chains wrapping around his mind. Not yet. Every glimpse through the stone made him more certain that only he, Saruman, had the wisdom to stand against darkness. And if the others could not see that truth, then perhaps they were part of the problem. The White Wizard began to speak with many voices, first to persuade, then to command. His robes no longer pure white, but woven with countless shades. When Gandalf later met him in Orthanc, Saruman declared himself Saruman of many colors. The change was complete. He no longer served the mission of the Istari. He served his own vision of order. A world ruled by logic, not mercy. A world where he, not Sauron, would decide what light and darkness truly meant. By the time the White Council met again, Saruman's mask was already cracking, though few could see it. When they debated whether to strike at the necromancer of Dol Guldur, it was Saruman who counseled patience. He spoke of caution, of wisdom, of waiting for the right time. But his true reason was darker. He knew the necromancer was Sauron, and he did not want him destroyed. Not yet. He was still studying, still learning, still convincing himself that he was in control. When Gandalf pressed for action, Saruman dismissed him with cutting words. The One Ring has long been lost. There is no danger in the north. He lied, because he had already begun searching for it himself. From that point on, Saruman's every move was a performance, one played in shadows and half-truths. He fortified Isengard, claiming it was for Gondor's defense. He built foundries, forges, and great wheels of metal beneath the tower. Trees fell, smoke rose, and the valley of Isengard turned from green to black. To those who questioned him, Saruman's voice was his greatest weapon. Tolkien describes it not as hypnotism, but as persuasion refined to perfection, a tone that could twist even the wisest heart into agreement. When he spoke, men believed not because they were forced, but because it suddenly felt right. And that is what made him dangerous. He didn't need to conquer armies. He conquered minds. He convinced the Rohirrim that he was their ally. He promised trade and peace while secretly sending spies and poison into their ranks. He whispered to Grima Wormtongue, twisting him into a serpent who would drain King Theoden's will from within. And all the while, Saruman gazed through the Palantír, speaking with the Eye in Mordor, believing still that he could master what no one else could. But the truth was simple. He was already lost. The more he gazed, the more Sauron's will seeped into his mind. He began to mirror him. Black banners, the symbol of the White Hand, armies of Uruk-hai, bred in secret caverns beneath Isengard. When the hour came, Saruman's choice was made. He revealed himself not as a servant of good, nor even as Sauron's true ally, but as a rival. He believed he could take the ring for himself and rule in Sauron's place. In that belief lay his final delusion. For even in his rebellion, he served the very darkness he claimed to master. The White Wizard had become a shadow of the very thing he once fought, and his tower, once a beacon of wisdom, had become a furnace of war. In the end, Saruman's fortress became his prison. When Gandalf and the Fellowship first passed through Rohan, they did not yet know what had become of the White Wizard, but the truth soon revealed itself, not through rumor, but through war. From the forges of Isengard, Saruman unleashed an army unlike any seen since the First Age, the Uruk-hai. Stronger than orcs, crueler than men, and bred to obey. They marched beneath the white hand of Isengard, his mark, and set the plains of Rohan aflame. Villages burned. The forests fell beneath axe and fire. The wizard who had once sought order now brought only ruin. And yet, in his mind, Saruman still believed he was the savior of Middle-earth. He thought to overthrow Sauron, using Sauron's own methods, to take the ring from whichever fool carried it and rule in his place. It was not malice that drove him, but certainty, the kind that blinds the brilliant. But Middle-earth doesn't bow to control. At Helm's Deep, his armies broke upon the walls like a tide of darkness. Thousands of orcs fell beneath the blades of Rohan, while the forests themselves rose against them. The Huorns, ancient spirits of Fangorn, answered the call of Treebeard and the Ents, who stormed Isengard in vengeance for the trees Saruman had slain. When Gandalf returned, not as the Grey, but as the White, his victory was already written. The old order had been broken. Saruman's fortress was drowned beneath the river Isen. His machines fell silent. His armies turned to mud and ash. But the most haunting moment came not in battle. It came afterward. Saruman stood atop the tower of Orthanc, surrounded by ruin. Gandalf rode forth and offered him one final chance. I gave you the chance of aiding me willingly, but you have chosen the way of pain. Even then, Saruman could have turned back, but pride was all he had left. So Gandalf broke his staff. The sound echoed like thunder. The White Wizard was unmade. And as Saruman fell from grace, a small stone rolled from the tower, the Palantír, the very instrument of his downfall. Fitting, then, that it should pass into other hands. For even evil's tools can still serve a greater story. Saruman would never wield power again. But his tale did not end in Orthanc. For pride, once sown, is slow to die. After the War of the Ring, Saruman's name was spoken only in whispers, a shadow among greater tales. But his story did not end at Isengard. When the victors rode north and the White Tower stood silent, Saruman was left broken but unrepentant. He was not imprisoned by Gandalf or slain by the Ents. Instead, he was cast out, free to wander, stripped of power, his staff shattered and his voice empty of command. That was mercy, but mercy to the proud can feel like cruelty. Homeless and humiliated, Saruman turned to the one who had served him most faithfully, Wormtongue. Together, they drifted like ghosts through the ruins of war, finally arriving in a place no one expected, the Shire. There, in the land of the hobbits, the fallen wizard sought to rule once more. He renamed himself Sharky, a petty tyrant over a peaceful people. The same voice that once swayed kings now ordered millers and thugs to tear down gardens and build ugly mills. The green hills turned gray. Smoke rose where flowers once grew. It was the last echo of Isengard's corruption, a mirror of his fall, from Maya to master, from master to beggar, from beggar to tyrant. When Frodo and the other hobbits returned from their journey, they found their home scarred by Saruman's greed. But the victory was swift and bloodless. His followers fled. His power was gone. And so, in the quiet of Bag End, Saruman met his end. He mocked Frodo one last time, sneering that the hobbits would never be rid of him completely. But Frodo, wiser than he knew, simply said, "Go. You have no power anymore." Saruman turned to leave, and that was when Wormtongue's knife found his throat. A servant's hand, ending the master's life. His spirit, pale, thin, and filled with malice, rose briefly from his body, looking westward, toward the light. But a cold wind blew from the west, and his spirit was scattered into nothingness. No Valinor, no forgiveness, just silence. Saruman's death is one of Tolkien's most haunting moments, because it is not a battle between good and evil. It is the quiet extinguishing of what once was great, a being made for wisdom, undone by pride. He wanted to rival Sauron. He became Sauron's reflection, and when he was finally free of power, there was nothing left of him at all. In the end, Saruman reminds us of one truth. Even the wisest can fall, and sometimes the greatest tragedy is not to be defeated by darkness, but to become it. But every fall leaves a lesson in its wake. Saruman's tale is not just a story of corruption. It's a mirror held up to every soul that believes knowledge alone can master power. And in that reflection, we see the warning Tolkien left for us all, that wisdom without humility is the first step toward ruin. If this story moved you, if you still hear echoes of the White Wizard in the wind, then join me for the next journey. Because Middle-earth is far from silent, its secrets whisper through time, waiting to be heard, waiting to be told. Subscribe and step once more into the world where myths endure and where stories never sleep.